Welcome back to Mia Horror Stories. Tonight's tale, I started a new job at a gas station, but the rulebook is bizarre, is best experienced in the dark, which is why the screen will stay black. No distractions, no flashing images, just you, your imagination, and the story. So sit back, relax, and listen all the way to the end if you dare. The bell above the door didn't jingle the way it should have. It gave one thin, strangled chirp, like the spring inside it had snagged, then went quiet halfway through the motion. The guy in the rain jacket paused with his hand still on the glass, looking up at the bell like it had personally offended him. He pushed the door the rest of the way open and stepped inside anyway, shaking water off his sleeves in a careful, contained way. Outside, the highway hissed, tires on wet asphalt. A semi downshifting somewhere in the dark. The station canopy lights through a hard white glare over puddles that looked like oil slicks, but were probably just rain collecting in tire tracks. Inside, the air smelled like burnt coffee and floor cleaner. Pine Sol trying to win against stale cigarettes and hot dogs that had been spinning a few hours too long. I stood behind the counter with my new name tag, Mark in bold black letters, crooked on my hoodie, and my hands were doing that useless thing where they hover like they want to be helpful, but don't know where to land. A laminated binder sat open on the counter beside the register. The rulebook. It was thick, the kind of office binder you'd expect for safety protocols or corporate nonsense, with color-coded tabs and handwritten sticky notes like someone had actually lived with it. The customer didn't look at the candy or the racks of energy drinks. He went straight to the coffee station, poured without checking the pot, then stood there and stared at the lid selection like he couldn't decide if his life was going to be sip or no sip. Behind me, the printer made a short grinding sound and spat out a single receipt blank except for the header. No sale, no item, no total, just the store address and the corporate slogan in a cheerful font. Thank you for shopping safe. I stared at it until my eyes tried to invent meaning. The man in the rain jacket set his coffee down and walked to the counter. He didn't buy anything else, just coffee. He put a crumpled 5 on the counter, damp at the edges, and didn't let go right away. His eyes flicked to the binder, then to me, then back to the binder. First night, he asked. My voice came out a little too eager. Yeah, is it obvious? He gave a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. You're standing like you're afraid the counter might bite you. I tried to laugh. It sounded like a cough in my throat. I grabbed the 5 and rang up a coffee, small, black, whatever the POS system wanted to call it. The screen lagged like it was thinking hard about whether coffee qualified as a concept. The receipt printer whined again. This time it printed like normal, with a total and tax. But underneath, in smaller text, there was a line that I'm pretty sure wasn't supposed to be there. Reminder, do not handle found property. Not even to clean, I blinked. The guy in the rain jacket noticed. He leaned forward slightly as if we were sharing a secret. It's fine, he said softly. Just don't get creative. Excuse me, I asked. He took his coffee and slid $2 in ones across the counter, tip maybe, or a gesture like he wanted to pay me off for something. Just follow what the binder says, he added. Even the parts that feel stupid. Then he turned and left. The door gave that same choked chirp on the way out. I watched through the glass as he crossed the lot without rushing, hood up, shoulders hunched against the rain. He didn't get into a car. Instead, he walked past the dumpsters, past the air pump, and disappeared into the darkness beyond the edge of the canopy, light like the lot ended in a cliff. I stood there longer than I meant to, staring at the empty space where he'd gone. A voice from the aisle behind me said, "Don't let Calvin freak you out." I jerked and turned too fast, bumping my hip into the counter. Pain snapped up my side. A woman came around the end cap of chips with a box of inventory tags in her arms. She moved like she'd done this 1,000 times and didn't have to think about corners or distances. Her hair was pulled back, face shiny, with the kind of tired that no longer bothers hiding. Darla Jenkins, 52, female. She was the shift supervisor, the one who'd hired me after a 10-minute interview where she mostly asked if I could show up on time and if I'd ever been arrested for theft. She set the box down and looked at me the way a mechanic looks at a new apprentice who's holding the wrench wrong. "Calvin's not wrong," she said, nodding at the binder. "But he likes the drama." "Who's Calvin?" I asked, even though I knew. She made a vague gesture toward the darkness outside. "Guy who thinks this place is the center of the universe. Comes in, buys coffee, gives newcomers advice. He's harmless, mostly." "Mostly," I repeated, letting it hang. Darla sighed and rubbed her forehead with her knuckle. "It's a weird station. It's right off the interstate, so you get all kinds, truckers, college kids, people who aren't going anywhere good, people who are." That last part came out flatter than the rest. She pointed at the receipt printer. "And sometimes the system prints junk. Corporate pushed an update last month. It's been touchy." I held up the weird receipt line. "This doesn't feel like corporate." Darla leaned in, squinted, then straightened like she didn't want her face too close to the paper. That was it. Just like acknowledging it gave it weight. She flipped the binder shut with one palm. The sound was loud in the small store. It made the shelves feel closer. "Mark," she said, and it felt strange hearing my name with the fluorescent hum around it. "I'm gonna level with you. Don't read ahead." "What? Don't read ahead," she repeated, sharper now. "You follow it as we go. You don't sit here at 2 in the morning getting yourself spun up." I stared at her. "Why would I?" "Because everyone does," she said. "Because it's boring and quiet, and your brain starts looking for patterns. You start thinking every little thing means something. You'll talk yourself into seeing trouble where there isn't any." She opened a drawer and pulled out a small, cheap flashlight, the kind that comes in a 2-pack at a hardware store. She set it beside the register. "Keep that on you," she said. "Not for creeps, for when the power flickers. It's an old building." She reached under the counter and slid out a clipboard with the schedule. "Your job is simple," Darla went on. "Rings, coffee, clean spills. Keep the bathrooms from turning into a crime scene. If you don't know something, you call me. If you can't reach me, you call Lon." "Lon?" I asked. She nodded toward the door, toward the back of the store where the office was. "Night security. He's not security like a mall cop. He's just a guy who watches cameras and walks the lot when he remembers. He'll be in soon." I tried to breathe like a normal person. It felt like my lungs were taking up too much space. New jobs always did this to me, made me hyper-aware of my own hands, my own voice, the fact that my face existed. I'd taken this job because my last one fell apart fast. Construction crew. Good money until I slipped off a wet platform and cracked my wrist on the way down. Not a dramatic fall, just a stupid one, 3 feet, wrong angle, and suddenly I couldn't grip a drill without lightning pain. Bills don't care about stupid falls. So, gas station nights. Temporary, I told myself. Something to keep the lights on in my apartment and prove to my sister I wasn't drifting. Again. But there was a private part of me, quiet, embarrassed, that hated the night shift for a different reason. At night, you can't pretend you're busy. You can't bury yourself in noise. You're forced to notice things. Like the way the canopy lights outside buzzed slightly out of sync, giving the lot a faint strobing shimmer when rain hit the asphalt. Like the way the store's security camera monitor in the corner had one feed that was always half a second delayed, making people look like they were dragging themselves across the frame. Like the way the bell above the door kept chirping wrong. Darla checked the clock above the cigarette display. 11:42 p.m. Okay, she said. Let's do the first set. The first set of what? I asked. She didn't answer right away. She opened the binder, flipped to a tab labeled opening/closing, and ran her finger down a list like it was scripture. Rulebook, she said. It's a corporate thing, mostly. Her mouth tightened on the word mostly, like she regretted it the second it came out. She slid the binder toward me, but kept her hand on it so it didn't fully leave her control. Read the top part, she told me. Out loud. Helps it stick. I looked down. The first page was clean and professional, printed in that generic business font. The kind of page you'd see in any chain store. Safety, theft prevention, emergency numbers. Then, halfway down, the tone shifted. Not dramatically, not into creepy poetry, just oddly specific. As if someone had taken the same format and started adding in things that weren't supposed to be in a gas station handbook. I swallowed. Darla watched me, her expression neutral, but her posture slightly angled like she could block the binder if she wanted to. Go on, she said. I ran a thumb along the page edge. It was worn soft from use. Out of the corner of my eye, headlights swept across the window. A car pulling into the lot. Slow, deliberate. I looked up. Darla looked too. We both watched the car glide into a pump and stop. The engine stayed running. The driver didn't get out right away. Just sat there, wipers clicking. Darla's jaw flexed once. Then she looked back at me and the binder. You can either start reading, she said quietly, or you can close it and work blind. I stared at the page, then at the car outside, and my hands still hovering, still unsure, finally settled on the binder. Not because I wanted to, because I didn't like the idea of working blind. Not at night, not here. Darla didn't let go of the binder until I started reading. My throat was dry, so the first words came out rough. All employees must keep the front doors unobstructed and maintain clear sightlines to the forecourt at all times. That's normal, Darla said, like she was soothing a dog that had seen a plastic bag move in the wind. I kept going. The page did the same thing it had done on the receipt, clean corporate language at the top, and then a drop into overly specific territory. If a vehicle remains at a pump with the engine running for longer than 4 minutes without fueling, do not approach the driver's side window. Notify supervisor. Begin pump pause protocol. I looked up because outside the idling car's headlights were still on, fixed on the wet pavement like 2 dull coins. Darla's eyes didn't go to the car. They went to the clock. Read the next line. Do not attempt to manually stop the pump by physical force. Use the POS pump controls only. I frowned. Who is out there yanking pump handles? Darla gave me a look that was quite annoyance and wasn't quite warning. Keep reading, My eyes tracked down. If the driver remains inside after pump pause and the vehicle does not move within 2 minutes, call Lon. Do not call police unless instructed. That made my stomach tighten. Not because of the words themselves, but because Darla's hand, resting on the counter, had gone rigid. Why wouldn't we call? I started. Mark, she cut in, quiet but firm. Rulebook, we do it in order. I swallowed the rest of my question. A stupid part of me wanted to impress her, to not be the jittery new guy who makes a big deal out of everything. The other part of me wanted to throw the binder across the store and go home. Outside, the windshield wipers on the idling car kept time. Click, click, click. The POS terminal chimed one sharp digital note, and the screen flashed a warning I didn't touch. Pump 3, auth timeout, engine running detected. My skin prickled. I hadn't even known it could detect that. Darla exhaled through her nose. Okay, we're at 4 minutes. How do you know? I asked, immediately hating how small my voice sounded. She pointed without looking. There was a cheap kitchen timer velcroed under the counter. I hadn't noticed it earlier because it was the same beige as everything else. The seconds hand was already past 3. So they'd started it the moment the car pulled in. That was the first undeniable break from normal that wasn't just a glitchy printer or a weird bell. That was preparation. Darla reached for the phone mounted beside the register and hit a speed dial button. It rang once, twice. A man answered, voice low and scratchy like he'd been mid-yawn. Yeah, Lon Mercer, 44, male, night security. Darla's just a guy. He sounded like he lived on coffee and 2-hour naps. It's Darla, she said. Pump 3, engine running. No movement. A pause. In the background, I heard a radio murmuring sports talk maybe, or a dispatcher channel. How long? Lon asked. 4 minutes, Darla said. Did he come in? Lon asked. No, another pause longer. Okay, don't go out there. Start pump pause. Darla hung up and immediately leaned over the POS terminal. Her fingers moved fast, like she'd done this more than once. A menu popped up with a list of pumps. She hit pump 3 and pressed something labeled pause/lock. Outside, the canopy lights flickered once, just a stutter, and I watched the pump's digital screen go dark. The car didn't move. The wipers kept clicking. What if they're just on their phone? I said, trying to keep my brain on the surface of things. Normal explanations. People do dumb stuff at pumps all the time. Darla didn't answer right away. She grabbed the flashlight and clipped it to her waistband like it was part of her uniform. Then she opened the drawer again and pulled out a small orange traffic cone, foldable, the kind you'd keep for a breakdown. We're not going outside, I reminded her, because the rulebook was still open in front of me, and those words, do not approach driver's side window, were suddenly loud in my head. We're not, Darla said. We're doing what it says. She slid the binder toward me. Flip to pump pause protocol. Tab should be red. My fingers fumbled the tabs. My wrist twinged an old pain, like a bad memory wearing a disguise. I hated that it still surprised me sometimes, like my body had changed and forgot to tell me. Red tab, forecourt incidents. The section wasn't long. It was written like someone had learned the hard way what to include. Lock affected pump. Announce closure of affected pump over intercom. Place cone at edge of affected lane from inside store using door side reach only. Observe for driver response. If driver exits vehicle, remain inside. Do not unlock pump. Offer assistance through closed door only. If driver approaches entrance, do not buzz in. Call Lon, I looked up. We have to announce it. Darla already had the intercom mic in her hand. She pressed the button and spoke like she was reading a script for a safety video. Attention customers, pump 3 is temporarily out of service. Please use another pump. Thank you. Her voice echoed in the empty store and then died. The silence afterward felt thicker, like the store was holding its breath. Outside, the driver's side door cracked open, just a few inches. Then it closed again. I felt my shoulders tense. Darla watched without blinking. Cone, she said. You said we're not going outside, I repeated stupidly. We're not stepping out, she said. Door side reach. She walked to the entrance and turned the deadbolt halfway, not unlocking it, just moving it enough that the door would open a controlled amount. And she opened the door a few inches. Rain smell rushed in sharp and cold. Highway noise got louder, wet, and constant. She knelt, extended her arm, and placed the folded cone just outside the threshold, then used her fingertips to nudge it into the lane line like she was pushing a chess piece. Then she shut and locked the door again. Okay, she said, back behind the counter. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were too bright. The driver's door opened fully this time. A figure stepped out. Medium height. Hood up, hands in pockets. They stood in the rain for a moment like they were deciding whether to be a person or a problem. Then they walked not to the pump, not to the store, but around the front of their car and toward the passenger side. A second shape moved inside. Oh, Darla said, and it was the first time I heard fear slip into her voice. The passenger door opened. Someone climbed out slowly, like it hurt. They bent forward and held the door frame, breathing hard. Even from this distance through the glass, I could tell something was wrong in the way their body moved, too careful, too stiff. The driver supported them with an arm at the elbow. They started toward the store. I grabbed the binder again, scanning for something that fit this. My brain wanted rules, because rules meant control. My phone buzzed in my pocket, an automatic notification from my banking app about a low balance alert I'd been ignoring for days. The vibration made my heart jump like a gunshot. Stupid. That's all it took. Darla moved first. She stepped to the door, one hand hovering near the lock, the other holding the phone. Lon, she said into it before it even rang, like she'd hit redial. They're out, 2 people. One looks hurt. They're walking toward the entrance. Lon's voice came through, suddenly awake. Don't buzz them in. They look like they need help, I blurted, and I hated myself for sounding like a kid. They might, Darla said without turning. And we can help through the door. The 2 figures reached the entrance. The driver leaned in close to the glass, shielding the injured person from the rain with their body. I couldn't see their face clearly under the hood, just the pale blur of skin and the dark hollow of eyes. The injured person's mouth opened like they tried to speak, but nothing came out at first. Then their hand slapped the glass once weak, not aggressive. Please, they managed, voice muffled through the door. Phone. Just call, they coughed, and I saw a dark smear on their knuckles when they lifted their hand again. Not a lot, but real. My stomach dropped. Darla didn't unlock the door. She crouched to get closer to their level, keeping her face angled so her own reflection didn't block her view. What happened? She called through the glass. The driver answered, fast and too rehearsed. Car trouble. Hit something. She's cut up. We need a phone. Your pump shut off. Why didn't you come inside right away? Darla asked. The driver's eyes flicked, just once toward the cameras in the corner of the ceiling, then back to Darla. My card wasn't working, they said. We're soaked. Please. The injured person slid down a little, leaving a faint streak on the glass where their shoulder touched. Their breathing sounded wet even through the door, like they were swallowing air wrong. That detail anchored me. This wasn't just someone trying to scam cigarettes. This was a body failing in a specific way. My flaw, the thing I hated about myself, kicked in right then. I freeze when I think I'm about to do the wrong thing. I stall, I overthink. I look for the perfect move so I don't get blamed later. It had cost me in jobs, in relationships, in every moment where someone needed a decision, and I gave them a debate. Darla's voice softened. Okay, we can call an ambulance. What's your name? The driver hesitated. Evan. What's her name? Darla asked. Another hesitation. The injured person's eyes lifted, unfocused, like they were looking through us. Jess, the driver said, too quick. Darla glanced back at me. Her eyes said, do you see it? I did. The way the driver held themselves slightly angled, not quite blocking Jess, but not quite letting her speak. The way they answered for her. The way they kept their hands in their pockets, even while someone beside them looked like they might collapse. Lon's voice came from the phone in Darla's hand, tinny but urgent. Darla, don't open. Call 911. Now. Darla nodded once, like she'd already decided. Then she hesitated just a flicker because Jess slid lower, knees bending. I stepped forward without thinking, palm on the lock. Darla snapped, Mark, don't. My hand froze. Jess's head tilted back and hit the glass with a dull, sick sound. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a human skull meeting a door. And then the driver, Evan, looked up at the camera again, and his expression changed. Not panic, not worry, annoyance, like the timing was inconvenient. That was when the power flickered again. The overhead fluorescence stuttered and went out. For half a second, the store was lit only by the glow of the cooler doors and the red standby light on the POS. When the lights came back, the driver was closer to the door than before, and Jess was gone from the frame, slumped below the window line. I heard a thump outside, then the scrape of something dragging on wet concrete. Darla backed away from the door. Lon's voice was suddenly louder, like he'd moved closer to his own phone. Darla, D-A-R-L-A, he's moving her. The driver's fist hit the glass hard this time. Open the door, he shouted, and the normal person mask was fully off now. Now, Darla's fingers shook as she punched numbers into the phone. The intercom crackled, and from somewhere behind the store near the restroom hallway, I heard another sound. A soft, wet cough. Inside the building, not outside. Darla's head snapped toward the back hall. So did mine, because the bathroom doors were supposed to be in clear sightlines, and I hadn't seen anyone go back there. The cough came again, closer this time. Darla didn't say anything. She just raised one finger at me, wait, and leaned her head slightly toward the back hallway. The store felt suddenly too big and too small at the same time, aisles stretching while the ceiling pressed down. The cooler compressors hummed like they always did, but now I couldn't tune them out. Every sound felt intentional. Outside, the driver Evan paced in front of the door, rain plastering his hoodie to his shoulders. He kicked the cone Darla had placed, sending it skidding across the wet concrete. It bumped the curb with a hollow plastic knock. Ambulance, Darla said into the phone, her voice clipped. We need an ambulance now. Injured female, possible head trauma. Driver agitated. Lon's voice crackled back. I see him. Cameras caught the drag. I'm calling it in 2. ETA, maybe 8 minutes. 8 minutes felt like a lie people told to make panic manageable. The cough came again, Definitely inside. Definitely from the restroom hallway. Mark, Darla said quietly, still watching the door. Bathroom check. Stay in sightline of the counter. Do not touch anything. I hesitated. My legs felt hollow, like I'd already run somewhere hard. What about him? I nodded toward the glass. He's focused on me, she said. Go, now. The hallway was a narrow rectangle behind the snack aisle, painted a tired off-white that absorbed light. The men's room door was on the left, women's on the right, office door at the end. The floors back here were tacky with old mop water. My shoes made soft, ripping sounds with each step. I held the flashlight, but didn't turn it on yet. The fluorescence overhead flickered, just a stutter, and steadied. Hello, I called, hating how my voice wavered. Another cough. Wet. Controlled, like someone trying not to make noise. It came from the men's room. I pushed the door open with my foot, staying behind it like a shield. The smell hit first. Antiseptic soap layered over old urine and something coppery that didn't belong. A guy was hunched over the sink, bracing himself with one hand. Late 20s, maybe. Brown hair plastered to his forehead. Blood ran from his nose into the basin in thin threads, diluted pink by the running tap. He looked up like I'd startled him mid-thought. Oh shit, he said. Sorry. I didn't mean to scare anyone. Relief crashed through me so fast it made me dizzy. You came in earlier. Yeah, he said, pressing a wad of toilet paper to his face. When the lights flickered, I get nosebleeds, bad timing, misdirection. That's what it was. My brain had turned a bathroom into a threat because everything else was already on fire. Are you okay? I asked. Yeah, I think so. He sniffed experimentally and winced. You got tissues that aren't sandpaper. I'll grab some, I said, already backing out. Just stay here. When I turned back toward the counter, Evan was no longer pounding the glass. He was gone. Darla stood rigid, phone still at her ear, staring through the door like she could will him back into view. Rain streaked the glass, blurring the pumps and the lot beyond. Pump 3 sat dark and inert. No bodies, no movement. Where is he? I asked. Lon answered before Darla could. He ducked behind the ice freezer. Camera angle loses him there. Of course it did. First attempt, call for help, follow protocol. Partial success, EMS on the way, but now the driver had disappeared from view. The trap tightened. Mark, Darla said, I's never leaving the glass. Did you find someone? Yeah, nosebleed, he's fine. Good, she said, but it came out thin. Stay up front now. I took my place behind the counter. Hands shook when I tried to set the flashlight down. The POS chimed again, unprompted. Forecourt alert, perimeter breach, rear access. My stomach dropped. Rear access, Lon swore softly. Back door, dumpster side, he's trying the handle. The back door was past the office, metal and dented, leading to the dumpster enclosure. It was supposed to be alarmed. Why isn't it? I started. It is, Darla said. Silent alarm. Corporate insisted. Said audible alarms escalate situations. Escalate, I repeated. Outside, thunder rolled low and distant, like a truck crossing a bridge. Darla made a decision. We need to lock down. She flipped the binder open with one hand, scanning. Her other hand wiped sweat from her neck, leaving a dark streak on her collar. Mark front door deadbolt stays. You office, now. What? I said. Office has the breaker panel and the back door camera, she said. If he gets in back there, my wrist throbbed as I pushed off the counter. Fear sharpened everything. I could hear my own breathing, too loud, too fast. The office was a cramped square with a desk, 2 monitors, and the breaker box mounted like a ribcage on the wall. One monitor showed the back lot in grainy grayscale. Evan's hooded shape flickered in and out as he tested the door, shoulders slamming once. The metal bowed inward with a dull gong. I grabbed the radio mic hanging on a hook. "Lon, he's at the back." "I know," Lon said. "I'm 2 minutes out. Lock the office." "How?" I asked. "Wedge," Darla's voice cut in from the front, tinny through the radio. "There's a bar under the desk." I found it with my foot, a steel rod meant for this exact thing. My wrist screamed as I jammed it into the door handle and braced it against the desk leg. The door rattled once, twice, then held. Second attempt, secure the perimeter. Partial success, the door held, but the effort cost me. Pain flared up my arm, hot and blinding. I bit down hard enough to taste iron. The back door shook again. Evan yelled something incoherent. Anger, not fear. The office monitor flickered, then went black. "What happened?" Darla asked. "Camera S out," I said. "Note monitor S down," Lon cursed. "Power surge. He might have hit the conduit." My phone buzzed again. Another low balance alert. I wanted to throw it. From the front, glass shattered. Not the door, one of the small panes near the bottom. A spiderweb crack bloomed, then a jagged hole. Rain sprayed through. Evan's arm punched in, hands scrabbling for the lock. "Mark," Darla shouted. I ran back, pain forgotten until it roared back with each step. Darla had backed the cigarette rack in front of the door, hands shaking as she shoved. Evan's fingers slipped through the broken pane, skin tearing. Blood smeared the glass in thick lines. "Open it," he screamed. "SHES dying. You're killing her." Sirens wailed somewhere far off, or maybe it was just my head. "Help is coming," Darla yelled back. "Step away from the door," he laughed. A short, sharp bark. "You think they'll get here in time?" He yanked his arm free and disappeared again, a beat. Then the cooler alarms went off. High-pitched, shrill. Every door sensor tripped at once. "Why?" I started. Darla's face went pale. "He's inside." The office door banged once. Twice. The wedge held, but the desk shifted. Lon's voice crackled, urgent now. He forced the back. "I'm pulling in. Lock yourselves in the cooler if you have to." The cooler. A glass box at the far end of the store, stocked with milk and soda and beer. No handle on the inside. Company policy. Point of no return. Evan's footsteps pounded down the hallway fast, confident, like he'd memorized the layout already. Darla grabbed my sleeve. Her grip was iron. "We can't let him get between us and the cooler." My wrist flared white hot. I gasped. She saw it, just for a second. Then she made the choice. "Run," she said, and the hallway lights went out. The lights didn't go out like a movie. They didn't die in one dramatic sweep. They stuttered. 3 quick flicks on, off, on like the building couldn't decide what it was. The fluorescents over the chip aisle stayed on, but the ones near the coffee station went dark. The coolers kept their glow, bright and clinical. The corner with the security monitor fell into shadow. Darla yanked me behind the counter hard enough that my hip clipped the metal edge again. Pain flared, sharp and stupid. My wrist throbbed like a second heartbeat. "Stay low," she hissed. I crouched. From down here, I could see under the candy racks and the bottom shelf of the cigarette wall dust bunnies, a fallen lighter, an old receipt stuck to gum. Normal trash, in a moment that was no longer normal. Footsteps hit the tile in the hallway. Fast, wet. The rhythm of someone who wasn't trying to be quiet anymore. Evan's hooded silhouette cut across the opening at the end of the snack aisle. He moved like he'd decided, finally, that he didn't need to pretend. Darla held the phone to her ear with one hand. The other hovered near the register keyboard, as if typing could save us. "Lon," she whispered. "He's inside." "I'm here," Lon's voice snapped back. "Parking now, back lot. Stay put. No sudden savior. Just distance measured in seconds and doors and bad luck." Evan's voice carried, loud and hard. "Where is she?" He wasn't asking us. He was asking the building. I realized, with a sick lurch, that Jess wasn't outside anymore. When Evan had vanished from the glass, when the pump and the rain and the dragging noises had blurred together, he hadn't just moved out of frame. He'd moved her. Darla's eyes met mine over the counter. Her face had gone tight, the muscles around her mouth locked. She'd been doing the same math. The rulebook binder lay open where we'd left it, pages fluttering slightly each time the HVAC kicked on. Could see the red tab forecourt incidents like a wound. Mark, think. My gaze dropped to the receipt printer. The earlier warning line flashed in my memory like a bruise. Do not handle found property. Not even to clean. Found property. My eyes went to the mat by the entrance. Something dark lay there that hadn't been there before. Small, wet, a phone. It must have slid in when the glass broke, or been pushed in. A rectangle of black glass catching the cooler light. Evan's voice turned toward the front. "You gonna make me break the rest of it?" Darla didn't move. I did, not toward the door, toward the phone. My brain screamed, "Don't touch it." The rulebook line felt like a hand on my wrist, but my flaw freezing had already cost us time. I couldn't afford it now. I hooked my foot under the edge of the mat and dragged it toward me inch by inch, like I was fishing. The phone scraped along with it, leaving a faint, wet streak. No touching. Just moving the world around it. Darla watched me, eyes narrowed, then nodded once like she understood exactly what I was doing and why. I flipped the mat over the phone like a lid. Then I slid the mat, phone hidden underneath behind the counter with my foot. Evan appeared at the end of the aisle again, closer. He had a metal tire iron in his hand now. It glinted in the broken light. His hood was down. His face was younger than I'd expected. Mid-20s. Scruffy jaw. Eyes too awake. Rainwater ran off his hair in little streams that made his cheeks shine. He scanned the counter, the binder, the register. Then he smiled like he'd found the punchline. "You got a book for everything, huh?" he said. Darla's voice came out steadier than it had any right to. "Leave. Help is coming." He barked out another laugh. "Help," he spat the word. "You mean the cops. You mean the ambulance that's gonna show up and ask a bunch of questions." He stepped closer, tire iron loose in his grip. "I don't have time for questions." The smell hit me then. Not blood, not gas, antiseptic. Like the bathroom soap, but sharper, like alcohol wipes. Jess was somewhere near. Evan leaned over the counter, trying to see past the cigarette rack. "Where is she?" Darla didn't answer. Evan's gaze flicked, just like earlier, to the camera dome near the ceiling. He looked at it like it was an eye he wanted to poke. Then he did something that made my stomach flip. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a key fob. He clicked it. Outside, a car horn chirped. Pump 3. So the car had a remote. So the idling had been deliberate. A timer, a trigger, a reason to get us focused out front while he worked the back. Darla's fingers tightened around the phone. "Lon," she said, voice low. "He has a fob. He planned this." Lon's reply came fast. "Darla, get to the cooler. Now, lock yourselves in." "The cooler locks us in," Darla snapped back. A beat. Lon hesitated. The office door banged again, loud enough to make the shelves rattle. The wedge held, but not forever. Evan's entry had turned the whole store into a funnel, pushing us toward one safe-looking trap. Darla's gaze flicked to the flashlight on her waistband, then to the fire extinguisher mounted beside the coffee station. Her jaw worked. She leaned toward me, voice barely a breath. "When I say go, you grab the extinguisher and you run for the cooler." My mouth went dry. "And you?" She didn't answer. Evan slammed the tire iron down on the counter. The sound cracked through the store. The binder jumped, pages fluttering. "Enough," he said, and the calm was gone now. His eyes were flat. "I'm not leaving without her." He vaulted the counter, not gracefully. He caught his shin on the edge, cursed, and dropped down behind it with a heavy thud that shook the drawer rails. Darla moved at the same time. She lunged for the register keys and slammed her palm down on the POS like she was swatting a bug. The screen flashed. Emergency pump shutdown. Auth required. She hit it again. And again. Rapid fire. The system chirped in protest. Then, because corporate loved procedures more than people, it did what it was designed to do when abused. It initiated a full forecourt shutdown. Outside, the canopy lights strobed once. Inside, the emergency lighting kicked in dim, red-tinged strips along the floor like a cheap airplane. The regular lights died completely. The store became a different place. Evan swore, spinning toward her in the red glow. "What did you do?" Darla backed away, keeping the counter between them. "I made it loud," she said. The silent alarm might not beep, but the system's shutdown pinged corporate servers. It would flag, it would log, it would leave a trail. Evan didn't care about corporate servers. He cared about now. He grabbed for her. She ducked, but his hand caught her sleeve and yanked. Fabric tore. She stumbled, slammed into the lottery display. Plastic tickets fluttered down like confetti. "Gio," Darla shouted. I went. I grabbed the fire extinguisher off its bracket with my good hand. The metal was cold and heavier than I expected. My injured wrist screamed. I almost dropped it. Evan turned toward me, eyes sharpening. He took one step, and my foot hit the mat. The flipped mat. The hidden phone underneath. I felt it through the rubber sole, solid, slick, then my ankle rolled. I went down hard. The extinguisher clanged against the tile. My wrist exploded with pain. White spots burst across my vision. Evan's grin flashed in the red light like a knife. "Nice," he said. He moved toward me, tire iron lifting. Darla screamed my name. I scrabbled one-handed for the extinguisher's hose. My fingers fumbled the pin. The safety ring snagged my nail. Evan loomed over me. I could smell rain and sweat and that sharp antiseptic scent. I yanked the pin free with my teeth. He swung, not at my head, at my shoulder. Realistic violence. A blow meant to disable, not kill. The tire iron hit my upper arm. Bone didn't snap, but something inside my shoulder shifted in a way that made me howl. The sound ripped out of me before I could control it. Tears burst hot. I squeezed the extinguisher handle. A roar of white powder blasted up into Evan's face. He recoiled, coughing, swearing, hands flying to his eyes. He stumbled backward, blind, hacking, as the chemical cloud filled the air. It wasn't a magic move. It didn't knock him out. It bought seconds. Darla grabbed my hoodie and dragged me by the collar toward the cooler. My shoulder screamed. My feet slid on tile dusted with extinguisher powder like snow. The cooler doors were 10 yards away, past the milk, past the soda, past the bright glass that suddenly looked like the only honest light in the building. Behind us, Evan coughed and raged. "You," a thud came from the office hallway, the wedge finally giving. Another voice yelled Lon's voice, muffled but close. "Police, drop it." Lon sounded terrified, which made everything worse. Evan, half blind, staggered toward the sound like an animal choosing the nearest exit. His tire iron swung wildly, hitting a chip rack. Bags burst, spilling into the powder like colorful debris. Darla shoved me against the cooler door. "Open it." My good hand found the handle. I yanked. The door opened with a suction sigh. Cold air hit my face, smelling like milk cartons and plastic. I stumbled inside. Darla followed, but she didn't pull the door shut yet. She looked back into the store, eyes scanning through the haze, for Jess. And that's when I saw her. Not outside, not at Pump 3. On the floor near the coffee station, half hidden behind the counter corner, curling on her side, shirt dark with blood at the ribs. Her eyes were open, unfocused, and her hand was stretched toward the front door like she'd been trying to crawl. She made a sound, not a cough, a wet little gasp. Darla's face crumpled for half a second, pure human reflex, then hardened. She stepped out of the cooler. "Darla," I croaked, my voice shredded. She ignored me. She grabbed the flashlight from her waistband and aimed it low, sweeping the beam across the powder cloud until it landed on Jess's face. Jess blinked slowly. Darla dropped to her knees beside her, keeping her body between Jess and the store. "I'm here," Darla said, voice shaking now. "I'm here. Don't move, okay?" "Don't." Jess's lips moved. No sound at first. Then, barely, he said book. Her eyes rolled. She went limp. Darla slapped Jess's cheek, not hard, just enough to keep her present. "Stay with me." Footsteps thundered closer. Lon's boots, heavy and uneven, like he was running on adrenaline and bad knees. Evan's shadow darted past the aisle gap, trying to slip around the back again, blinded and furious. Lon crashed into him. They went down hard behind the chip aisle, bodies colliding with shelving. The sound was ugly bone on tile, metal on metal, a grunt cut off. Darla didn't look. She kept pressure on Jess's side with both hands, red light reflecting off her knuckles. I stood inside the cooler doorway, frozen again, because I didn't know which emergency to choose. And then, finally, sirens. Close. Real. Blue light flashed through the rain-streaked windows, pulsing against the powder-filled air. "Police," someone shouted outside. "Show your hands." Evan screamed something incoherent. A desperate sound, not supernatural, just human collapse. A taser crackled sharp, electrical, and Evan's body jerked once in the aisle gap before going still. The store fell into a strange lull. Powder settled slowly. The cooler hummed. Somewhere, a spilled soda can fizzed quietly like an animal breathing. Darla's shoulders sagged. She was still pressing Jess's wound, hands trembling with effort. I looked down at my arm. A bruise was already blooming. My wrist felt wrong, too loose, too hot. Lon's voice came from the floor somewhere beyond the aisle, ragged. "Darla, you okay?" Darla didn't answer right away. She stared at the rulebook binder lying open on the counter, pages dusted white, as if it had been snowed on. Then she looked at me, eyes glossy. "We followed it," she whispered, like she couldn't believe it. "Mostly." And I realized the cost wasn't just bruises and blood. It was the way my body had learned, in one night, how thin a glass door really was. How quickly a normal shift becomes a barricade. How rules can keep you alive and still leave you with something broken. The first thing I noticed once the adrenaline started draining was how much the fire extinguisher powder stank. Not in a dramatic way, just this gritty, chemical chalk smell that coated the inside of my mouth and made every swallow feel like I was licking drywall. It floated in the air under the canopy of dim emergency lights, settling in slow motion on the candy wrappers, the counter, the open rulebook pages, the puddles that had blown in through the broken glass. A paramedic stepped through the doorway and immediately slipped a little on the powder. He caught himself on the doorframe and muttered, "Jesus," under his breath like he was annoyed at the universe. He was young, maybe early 30s, with tired eyes and a jacket that still shone wet from the rain. Another paramedic followed, older, moving briskly with a hard case in her hand. Behind them, 2 cops in rain-dark uniforms swept flashlights across the aisles, boots crunching on spilled chips. "Anyone inside with injuries?" the older paramedic called. Darla didn't raise her hand. She didn't say me. She kept her palms pressed to Jess's side like if she let go, the whole situation would peel apart. "Here," I croaked from the cooler doorway. My voice sounded wrong, thin, and scraped. I hadn't even realized I'd been breathing shallow. The younger paramedic looked at me, then at my arm, then at the swelling that had already started under my hoodie. He pointed. "You sit now." I tried to argue, and my shoulder answered for me with a pain so sharp I saw white. I sat on the tile beside the cooler door, back against the glass like it might anchor me. The older paramedic dropped beside Darla and Jess. "Ma'am, I'm going to take over, okay?" Her voice was firm in a way that made you want to obey. "Can you tell me your name?" Darla blinked like she'd forgotten words existed. "Jess," she said. She said Jess. The paramedic glanced up, eyes quick. "Did she say anything else?" Darla hesitated. Then, quietly, as if saying it out loud would be an accusation, she said, "He said book." The paramedic didn't react like that meant anything. She just nodded and slid her hands under Darla S., replacing pressure with practiced efficiency. "Hey," she said, "we've got her." Only then did Darla's hands lift. They were smeared red and white, blood and powder. She stared at them like she didn't recognize her own skin. One of the cops approached her, a woman with her hair in a tight bun and a body camera blinking red. She crouched to Darla's level without touching her. Officer Kendra Miles, 38, female. Her voice was calm in a way that wasn't comforting so much as structured, like she'd learned the hard way what panic does to a room. "Ma'am," she said, "are you hurt?" Darla shook her head once, automatically. Then she looked at Jess and her face twitched. "No, I am fine, she's not." Officer Miles nodded. "Okay, we'll talk in a minute. Right now, focus on breathing." Her gaze slid to me. "And you?" "Shoulder," I said. "Wrist." The younger paramedic was already kneeling beside me with a flashlight. He didn't ask permission, he just pulled my sleeve back gently and probed the tender spot above my elbow. When he touched the wrong angle, my stomach rolled. "Probably a contusion and maybe a subluxation," he muttered, more to himself than me. "Any numbness?" "No," I lied, because my fingers felt like they were wrapped in cotton. He gave me a look that said he'd heard that lie before. "We're going to splint your wrist and sling the shoulder. You're going to the ER." "Can't," I said instantly, because my brain always went to money first. Yeah," he cut in, not cruel, just blunt. "You can. You're going." Across the store, there was shouting, short, angry bursts, but it wasn't the chaos I'd expected. It was procedural. 2 officers had Evan pinned near the chip aisle gap, his face pressed into the powder slick tile. Zip ties bit into his wrists. His hoodie was half off, one arm twisted behind him. He was coughing deep, wrecked coughs from the extinguisher powder, from the fight, from panic. "Tell me where she is," he rasped, even though Jess was 10 feet away and being worked on by paramedics. His voice had lost all theatrical edge. Now it was just this desperate insistence, like he could still argue reality into changing. Officer Miles didn't look at him. She looked at the store, at the broken pane in the door, at the rulebook binder still open on the counter like a witness. "Who called?" she asked, voice raised just enough to cut through the noise. "I did," Darla said, hoarse. "And Lon?" "Lon called too." From the back hallway, Lon appeared, limping hard. His jacket was unzipped, and his shirt underneath was dusted white. There was a cut on his forehead that bled into the powder in a thin pink line. He walked like every step hurt, and he was refusing to admit it. Lon Mercer, 44, male. In the bright beam of a cop's flashlight, he didn't look like just a guy. He looked like someone who'd been in a lot of bad moments and had learned how to stand in them. He stopped beside Darla, eyes flicking to Jess, then to me, then to the officers. "You okay?" he asked Darla. Darla's mouth trembled. She nodded, but it didn't look like a yes. Lon looked at Officer Miles. "I'm the night watch." Cameras showed him dragging her. He forced the back door. Silent alarm pinged, but he stopped himself, jaw tightening. "It's silent." Officer Miles's eyebrows rose a fraction. "Silent. Corporate policy," Darla said, and the way she said corporate made it sound like a curse. The officers exchanged a quick glance that wasn't judgment, exactly. More like, "We're going to have questions." The older paramedic lifted her head. "We've got a pulse. Weak. We need to move." They rolled Jess onto a backboard. Her face was gray under the emergency lights, lips slightly blue. The blood on her shirt was darker now, almost black in the red glow. One of the paramedics pressed an oxygen mask to her face, and the plastic fogged with each shallow breath. As they carried her past Evan, his head lifted. His eyes met hers for a split second, hers unfocused, his sharp with something that wasn't guilt. "Jess," he croaked. "Jess, tell them about the." Officer Miles pressed his head back down with a hand between his shoulder blades. "You don't talk to her," she said, even, like she was telling someone to stop touching a hot stove. Jess didn't respond. The gurney wheels squeaked over the tile, leaving faint tracks through the powder like someone had drawn lines in chalk. When the paramedics pushed her out into the rain, the night air surged in again, cold, wet, loud. Sirens pulsed and faded as the ambulance doors opened. The red and white lights outside painted the store interior in alternating flashes, turning everything staccato. I realized I was shaking. Not the cinematic trembling people do when they're scared. More like my muscles were trying to burn off leftover electricity. The younger paramedic finished wrapping my wrist with a rigid splint and lifted my arm into a sling. The movement made my shoulder grind in a way that turned my vision fuzzy. He steadied me. "You got anyone you can call?" he asked. "My sister," I said automatically. Then my throat tightened. I pictured her face lighting up when she saw my name on her screen at midnight. The guilt landed heavy. "Call her from the ambulance," he said. "Now, before you talk yourself out of it." Officer Miles approached me next, careful of my sling. "Mark Wright?" she asked, reading my crooked name tag like it was the only reliable thing in the building. "Yeah, I'm going to ask you some questions," she said. "Not tonight, if you're going to the ER, but soon." I nodded. My brain felt slow, like it had been sanded down. She looked at the binder on the counter again. "That rulebook, that yours?" I said. It was here. Who wrote it? She asked. Darla answered from behind her, voice flat. Corporate, they say. Officer Miles didn't look convinced. She walked to the counter and very deliberately did not touch the binder. She pulled on a pair of gloves first, then lifted it by the edges like it might smear. The pages were dusted white and speckled with blood droplets. The red tab stuck out like a flag. She flipped it closed and set it in an evidence bag like it was a weapon. That simple act made my stomach drop harder than anything Evan had done, because it meant the binder wasn't just weird, it was relevant. The store manager arrived about 20 minutes later. He came in wearing dress shoes that immediately got ruined by the powder and rain. He looked at the broken door and the police tape, and he made a sound like he'd swallowed a lemon. He wasn't asking if we were okay. He was asking how bad it was. Darla stared at him like she'd never seen him before. When the ambulance crew wheeled me out, I passed the front door one last time. The bell above it hung crooked now, springs stretched, giving no sound at all. The lot was a blur of wet light. Police cruisers, the ambulance with its doors yawning open, a few bystanders in cars at the far pumps, phones raised, filming from behind glass. Lon stood under the canopy, talking to another officer. He looked older than he had an hour ago. Darla was inside, sitting on a milk crate behind the counter, hands wrapped in a towel someone had given her. Her eyes were fixed on the empty spot where the binder had been. As they lifted me into the ambulance, I saw something on the tile near the entrance, half hidden by the flipped floor mat. The phone, still there. No one had picked it up. Not the cops, not the paramedics, not Darla. Because of one line on a receipt. Because of one line in a binder. Because the rules had become a kind of gravity. The door shut. The siren didn't wail right away. The EMT waited for a gap in traffic. Like this was still just a night with rules and timing. I lay back, staring at the ceiling panels, listening to the rain drum on the roof. My wrist pulsed. My shoulder burned. My mouth tasted like chalk. In the corner of my vision, the EMT's tablet pinged as he entered notes: injury, mechanism, vitals. Technology doing what it was supposed to do. And still, I couldn't stop thinking about Evan's last attempt to talk. Tell them about not the injury, not the crash, the book. And that's the end of today's chilling tale. If you enjoyed this story and want more nights full of suspense, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and turn on the bell so you never miss a scare. I've got plenty more stories waiting for you, so stick around and check out the other videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe and don't look behind you.